Welcome to your weekly space of self-indulgence, discovery, and community. I'm your host, Mariah, here to guide you through insights, tips, and stories. Thanks for joining me. Now let's get started. Welcome back to the Self-Indulgent Podcast. I am your host, Mariah. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, follow if you're on Spotify. It really helps a lot, and you will see every time a new episode uploads, which is every Thursday morning. So today, we're talking about reciprocity. What I think I've heard recently is like givers, takers, matchers. I've heard like give and take, but like matchers was a new term for me. I like to think about this stuff energetically and even I think just on some like foundational levels. So I want to talk about reciprocity in relationships. And so the way that I'm describing that is through an exchange of energy and support in relationships. That's how I'm talking about it and describing it. If you listen to my Redefining Friendship episode, which seemed to be my most popular episode at the time, I briefly talked about like doing quality checks of your environment, which is the people around you, the people you surround yourself with, what you're pouring in, what you're getting back, and just basically figuring out if like certain relationships are no longer serving you. And so this is an interesting topic for me because I think there are two sides to this, but I'm hoping to kind of explain more of like a third gray area because I think that's where I fall or where this time in my life anyway that I'm falling. So there's this side of like where people are like relationships should not be transactional. It is if you're acting out of pure intention, love and care and support, then you shouldn't be looking for something in return. Otherwise, it wasn't like true altruism or just like love in general. I feel like this kind of falls into an unconditional love type of mindset. And then there's the other side where it's like, I don't have the time, energy, capacity to pour into people who are not actively pouring into me as well, period. Like those are kind of the two ends, I think. So let's start with the former. I'm going to call it the unconditional love side for now. I think when I hear this perspective, it feels like a more idealized version of reciprocity that may situationally be unrealistic in today's world, especially in the spaces I'm in. I don't think I could operate from such a idealized version of that, especially as a person of color, especially at a PWI and white spaces in general, and the energy that I'm putting into being a therapist. So that already leaves me with a very finite amount of energy at the end of the day. Also, as a recovering people pleaser, I've really learned the hard way about giving to those who don't really deserve it. It leads to burnout. And while it would be nice for me to just be giving all willy-nilly 24/7, I need to be taken care of too. I need to be seen and I need to be appreciated as well. Now, where I do kind of understand this side of things and reciprocity is that you shouldn't actively be giving to somebody with the hope of something in return. Like, see how this kind of falls into a more gray area? Like, yeah, I'm saying that if I'm pouring into you, I expect pouring back, but I'm not pouring for necessarily like an immediate reciprocation or with the intent of looking for how you're going to reciprocate. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not giving with the intention of just receiving, just to get something. That's not why I'm giving. That's not the motivation, especially if my people are going through it, right? So my intention is more so I got your back, you got mine. Right now, you may be going through it, and I'm gonna be there, period. And then in a few months, I might be going through it. And I'm giving because I care about you, and I want to see you flourish and thrive. But I also have limits, and that's okay. And I hope that when I need support and community, that's reciprocated, right? That love, care, intention is reciprocated. So there are 3 types of reciprocity that I found looking online, and I wanted to talk about them more. So like we're talking about ways in which there's exchange in relationships. There's balanced reciprocity, which is like situational, giving something and expecting a specific outcome in return as repayment. And it's usually pretty equal. So like if you send somebody a happy birthday text, you would expect to, and you would hope to get one in return. Like you would expect to get one in return. Or when it's your birthday, or you give a gift to somebody on their birthday, you would expect a gift from that person on your birthday. Like that's a balanced reciprocity. It's kind of equal. This typically falls in line with like less close friends, acquaintances. That's kind of who typically would fall into this kind of category. Maybe of like a cousin who you're not like besties with that you talk to all the time, but they're in your life still. Then you have generalized reciprocity. And this is the giving freely without expecting anything specific in return aside from like general goodwill. This can harbor like mutual respect and connectedness. And you probably already have like a relationship like this because it's going to typically be in relationships with people like you trust and care for deeply, very close friends, very close family. And then you have negative reciprocity. And that's the act of giving minimally only to receive something of greater value in return. So somebody is giving more than the other person, and that other person is giving very little and still wanting and getting that bigger outcome from the other person. It's not equal. I think that there can be a point where people are feeling negative reciprocity, and that's when relationships start to break down, or that's where we start to question our place in relationships with people. And this is like any kind of interpersonal relationship. So those three, I got that from the masterclass, had an article on those three specifically. So I thought that those are like a good breakdown of kind of like what you might be seeing in your day-to-day. If you're finding yourself in a negative reciprocity relationship, or just in a relationship where you feel like you're a giver and somebody is starting to feel like a taker, and you're looking for more of a match, like you want it matched, you want to feel supported, I think it's important to really think about it, be clear about that, and then obviously approach the conversation. And I'll talk more later about like having these conversations, bringing it up, talking about it. But first, I want to talk about some reasons why you may have fallen into this pattern, why, if you feel like you're noticing it a lot in your relationships, and now you're kind of like, what the heck? Is it me? What is the problem? Why is this happening to me? I think that it's easy. It can be easy to kind of create certain patterns and cycles in relationships that may lead to maybe the other person isn't even intentionally being more of a taker because, you haven't even kind of laid down what your expectations are for the friendship, relationship, whatever it is. Here are some things that I thought about, like why you might be in this pattern and why you haven't been able to get out of it. Fears of confrontation. When I say this has whooped my ass, fears of confrontation have whooped my ass for years. I wouldn't say it's beating me down now. I would say that I'm struggling with, am I just avoiding confrontation, or am I at a place where I'm not at capacity to explain to somebody why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling because of past experiences and it not necessarily being heard well? And so am I okay with how things are, and do I need to just reassess where I'm pouring in? I think it's a really good place for me to start is to, as somebody who's been a natural can't help it giver and people pleaser, I think right now I'm enjoying practicing the recognition that I am overdoing it. I am giving too much in this relationship. And then I think also then working on like, hey, like these are the things I would hope for in this relationship that we can do for each other if I feel like that relationship can do that. Okay, so back to fears of confrontation. So if you're a people pleaser, or maybe even somebody who's been bullied or belittled in life so far by others, or especially from people who you love, it can be very difficult to go to people when you recognize a want need that you have in that specific relationship. So then it's possible that, when you've had that experience, for you to have a fear of confrontation or even rejection. And I'll talk a little bit more about rejection in a second. But I think we need to reframe us approaching others with needs and wants by reminding ourselves, I am speaking my truth in intentional ways because I love and care about this person and I want them more present in my life. I feel like this is really helpful because the stronger that you feel in your intention, the more authentic you're going to show up and the more confident you're going to feel. So when you decide to talk about your relationship with somebody, with that person, just remember your intention and your why as some of like self-reassurance, right? In a uncomfy conversation. Okay, so now I want to talk about fears of rejection, because I think that if you've had some of the experiences I've described, people in your life, then there is also like a fear of rejection as well. No one likes to feel unwanted, unloved, especially when we really do care about that person. We have to pay very close attention to the messages that we're telling ourselves about ourselves in relation to other people. So for example, let me explain that. If there's someone I really admire and appreciate, and I just think they're the bee's knees, and they're just like really dope, and they're kind of in maybe my social circles, and I'm having trouble, or I feel like I'm having trouble strengthening and connecting more with that person, but I'd like to build on it. I'd want to pay really close attention to what I'm telling myself about why the connection isn't stronger. What narrative am I spinning? Am I telling myself I'm not as cool, I'm not worthy, they're so smart, they're so charismatic, they're so busy, like what narrative am I spinning in my head? And that this is like idealization, really. Whatever story I'm telling myself over time can discourage me from putting myself out there, leading to a fear of rejection. Like that's really what that turns into. So I want to reframe. I am lovable. I am worthy of all and everything that is meant for me. I release and let go of what is not meant for me. And I know that this will free up energy and space for what is meant to be for me, and that also serves me. And the important part of this is that we have to work on not psyching ourselves out, right? So not even necessarily trying. We have to work on being able to communicate with others regardless of outcome. That's, I think, the big thing here. Regardless of outcome, we have to be solid in our intention, our why, our purpose, and what we're looking for, right? Like, we really just have to be honest with ourselves and others and be okay with whatever outcome, because we stay true to kind of who we are, what we're looking for. Okay, and then a third reason why you might be in these situations is enmeshment. That is, and I got this definition from Psychology Today, overly connected and needs to meet the needs of others so badly that they lose touch with their own needs, goals, desires, and feelings. And then the thought of being without that person can be anxiety inducing. So that's all from Psychology Today. We learn a lot about ourselves through relationships. However, in enmeshed relationships, it's very likely that we can start to lose ourselves because our now entire lives can be based on the other person and what they want and do and don't approve of. Your mood in these situations is entirely dependent on that other person's and your ability to make them feel good, right? So that sounds like a very unhealthy giver, like a giver who is now in a pattern of giving tremendous sacrifice that may be more harmful than unconditional love type of giving, So it's important to be able to keep your own identity and your own sense of self, especially in order to communicate well, to set boundaries, and to address conflict, right? So like this is part of the reason why you may be in situations, where you're giving more because you're unable to find the confidence or the words, the communication to be able to express a need, a want. People can't read minds. They're not going to know unless you tell them. And enmeshment can be difficult to acknowledge if you've been in it for a long time, especially if you experienced it with a caregiver, because then you're like experiencing that from a very young age. And that could be your only example of a really close relationship. And it is your only example of a really close relationship when you're that young. Okay, and then there are some ways that you can maybe tell if you're in kind of an enmeshed relationship that I just wanted to bring up since I brought up this topic. This could be a whole topic in and of itself. One of them being you don't feel in touch with your own feelings because you're constantly focusing and concentrating on the other person's needs and feelings. You believe it's your responsibility to save, protect, or serve another person. You're giving up hobbies or interests to adapt to the lifestyle of the other person. You suppress your own feelings to avoid conflict or argument. I think that's just another one in general. I don't think you necessarily have to be in an enmeshed relationship, but that fear, that developed fear can maybe why you're stuck in these patterns in friendships or relationships. You feel anxious or scared if there's conflict, and you'll do whatever you need to do to resolve it, and it's typically in favor of the other person. And there's more, but those all came from Psychology Today as some of the signs. And just know that like you can get out of an enmeshed relationship. You know, you would work on boundary setting and being able to have communication, and I could do a whole episode on enmeshed relationships if you guys are of interest or you feel like you may be in enmeshed relationships or have been. But I do think that's important to think about in terms of reciprocity, because in that person is not getting any of their needs met, and they probably at this point don't even know what they are. Okay, so now I want to talk about actually having these conversations. Now, obviously, when we have these conversations, we need to, one, take a deep breath. I just took a deep breath. That's for some reason, but we want to take a deep breath. And if it helps you to write down, journal, kind of get out the very rough version of what you want to say first, then do that. I think that can be really helpful, help you get the nerves out. And then after you see that, how can I frame this? Because it might be a little rough. It might be a little emotional. It might be a little, it could be resentful depending on how long you've been dealing with like a negative reciprocity relationship, but you want more from. So I then encourage you to look at it through a lens of, I love this person, or I care about this person. I want to build with this person. I want to feel connected with this person. But I recognize that in order for me to do that successfully and feel good about it, I need some of my needs met. And just, getting clear on what's required, what's maybe some stuff that you have from your past, what we're willing to be flexible about, what you're not willing to be flexible about, really just what you're looking for, right? Because you don't want to ever go in and it turned into a blame session. So that's really important. So I think just being very intentional about your message and your word and your experience, and without placing blame, and emphasizing why this is important, why you care so much, and what you need to continue to move forward. If someone does not respond well to you bringing up quality concerns, and that's what I'm going to call it. This hit me the other night when I was talking to somebody about something, and I'm like, yeah, now that I think about it, I've been in situations where I've brought up quality concerns in ways where I just expressed how I was feeling, not even saying that somebody did something or saying, I didn't like when you did this, you made me feel this way. No. Saying that I felt in this way, or even just saying I feel unimportant or I feel less important, was not being received well. And in saying that, I realized that it's literally like a quality concern. I am having trouble or concern with the quality of our relationship without really saying that. That's not what I said, right? But that is what I'm expressing. I'm expressing a form of, this could be better. I want this to be better. I don't think this is the best quality right now, right? How can we improve quality? It's a quality concern. And so when the quality concern is not received well, then consider two things: your delivery of the concern, like I just talked about, and that maybe you're just not a good fit, and you have to decide the types of the relationships that you have capacity for right now. If you came from the place of love and intention, then you should be able to just talk about your needs, but you also have to be okay with whatever feedback you get in return. You can't control the other person's responses. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're very hot about it right now, or very emotional about it right now, and you're going to take things very personally, maybe we hold off on the conversation and find ways to build confidence and humility before having this type of conversation. It's funny, I saw a TikTok of this girl that my friend sent me where she was basically saying that your friendship, I'm not giving my friendships the same energy that I'm giving like my husband, and that some of us have way too high expectations of friends. I feel like this is a very limited like mindset and way to look at it, right? Because that is then potentially discouraging people from needs or discussing conversations of just like kind of what they hope for in the relationship. And I think that that's like kind of shutting things down before actual conversations could be had, to see where we can be flexible, where we can adapt, where we can, be there for each other. When is it too much? When is it not too much, right? Because things are constantly changing, and my capacity to do something for somebody is going to change day to day, truthfully. So I don't know. It just felt like a very kind of limited way to look at it, because I can go above and beyond one day, and then the next day I'm just like not having it. Or, right, like maybe it is that like my partner is in a tougher spot, and I choose that I'm in this day I'm going to have to show up for them, right? So I think it's more nuanced than just like that. I also believe that one person cannot be everything for you. One person cannot be your entire support system. That's so much pressure to put on one individual, and it's exhausting. I'm learning that I think more community should be involved. It's up to you to decide the quality of relationships that you're looking for. And I think it's fair to say I only have enough space for a few close relationships. Maybe like in my life space right now, I have the space for 2 really close friends and my partner and my kids. Fair. That's fair. But knowing that is important, and being intentional about who that is important. And the energy reciprocated in those relationships becomes even more important. But we also have to balance like meeting people where they're at, and decide if you're cool with the energy and capacity they have to pour right now, and waiting for that to kind of flip and switch. So yeah, I've definitely had issues with bringing up quality issues. Like, again, I haven't done it a whole lot of times, right? 1, I'm still young, and 2, the fear of confrontation, rejection, and the overall like people pleasing has made it hard to do. But I'm starting to do it more. I think it's better if you can get ahead of it before you're heavily impacted by it, because then your energy is going to change, right? I think that maybe ask and talk about it and express a need before you get to a point where you're protecting yourself. So you're just changing your energy, and you're changing what you're giving, because even if you were already always giving more, people notice the decrease. People notice the less than. And for me, it's like, why are you upset? All I'm doing now is matching. I've moved down from overgiver to a matcher. I'm matching your energy now. But if there is a shift, people are going to feel that shift. And so I think it's better to get ahead of it before you've gotten to a place where you're just like, I'm changing the way I'm moving, right? Especially if it's a relationship that you care about. And so when I've brought up quality issues, I've had situations where it's kind of felt like versus kind of just being heard and sat with like how I was feeling, it kind of got flipped on me. Like I shouldn't be thinking about it like that, and how I should see things differently, and I shouldn't be comparing energies, like just like weird stuff. Or not even weird, like I shouldn't say that, like very dismissing. And now looking back on it, it was probably more of like a defensive type of thing. And I understand to an extent like why you wouldn't want to. Again, of course, we're not just giving to get, right? But that's not what I was saying. And I think it was taken that way. But at the end of the day, I'm expressing that I feel like I mattered less, and that I show up so hard because I want to be there, because I care, because I enjoy my time with you. And that effort isn't being matched. So the response of I don't see things like that was very dismissive. And then we were no longer talking about the issue. Like we were no longer talking about my feelings and wanting to like make a change. And I probably could have changed the outcome by coming with these are the things that would make me feel differently, but I didn't, right? So I encourage you to get very clear on what you're looking for, how you want things to improve, what suggestions you may have, just ways that you want people to show up for you. And I didn't have that ready and prepared, but also that person could have got curious, and that would have been a really good sign of somebody who wants to be on the same page, wants to be involved in similar ways. So ultimately, I did have to let things go because I was not going to be able to get what I needed. And what I needed wasn't even being given the space to be recognized or heard. So just know that it may hurt if things don't turn out the way you hoped. But know that there is nothing wrong with you, and you have to clear energy and space for people who are meant for you to find you and reciprocate what you're looking for. So I hope all of that like made sense, because I feel like there was a lot of other involved topics in this, and I probably missed things that very well could have been in this conversation, but this is a really big conversation. With that being said, my reflection question for you is, are there any relationships that you've been wanting more from, that you want to explore more, or where you feel like energy isn't being reciprocated in ways that feel of value to you? And do you want to talk about it? Why haven't you talked about it? What might it look like to talk about it? And do you have an example of the type of reciprocity in a relationship that you're looking for? Like who do you have really good reciprocity with, or a balanced reciprocity, as mentioned in that article early on? So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, comment down below. Let's talk. I want to know more. I want to know where you're at. I want to hear your experiences. If you're listening to this wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow so you see our new episodes every Thursday. Download the episode. That also really helps. Thank you so much for listening, and have a blessed and intentional week.